I came home and heard my husband. "Hurry up. She could be back any minute. We have to finish." My hands started shaking. I opened the door and couldn't believe my eyes. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. My name is Margaret, and for 42 years I believed I knew my husband. I believed I knew what our life meant, what our family stood for, and where I belonged in this world. I was wrong about all of it. Robert and I had built our life in a modest 2-story house in suburban Connecticut. We raised our son David there, celebrated Thanksgivings, weathered storms both literal and metaphorical. When David married Jennifer 5 years ago, I welcomed her with open arms. She seemed sweet, attentive, always asking about my health, my plans, my finances. I thought she cared. The first strange thing happened 3 months ago. I came home from my book club to find Robert and Jennifer sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread between them. They stopped talking the moment I walked in. Robert smiled too quickly, shuffling the documents into a folder. "Just helping Jennifer with some tax paperwork," he said. Jennifer's smile didn't reach her eyes. I didn't think much of it then. Why would I? The second incident was subtler. I mentioned to Robert that I wanted to update my will, add a clause about donating to the animal shelter I'd volunteered at for years. He became agitated, insisting it wasn't necessary, that we'd discuss it later. Later never came. Every time I brought it up, he changed the subject or became irritable. Then there were the doctor's appointments. Jennifer started accompanying me, insisting she wanted to help. She'd interrupt when I spoke to the doctor, exaggerating minor memory lapses I'd mentioned in casual conversation. "She forgot where she parked last week," Jennifer would say, her voice dripping with concern. "And she couldn't remember our neighbor's name." These were small things, normal things, but the way she presented them made me sound like I was losing my mind. I wasn't losing my mind. Robert started treating me differently too. He'd repeat things I'd just said back to me, asking if I remembered telling him. He'd move my reading glasses and then express worry when I couldn't find them. Once I found them in the refrigerator. I knew I hadn't put them there, but Robert looked at me with such pity that I questioned myself. Was I imagining things? Was I actually becoming forgetful? That Tuesday afternoon, I went to the grocery store. I'd forgotten my list on the counter, so I returned home after only 15 minutes. My car was quiet as I pulled into the driveway. The front door was unlocked, which was unusual. I pushed it open slowly, grocery bags in hand. That's when I heard his voice. Robert's voice, coming from the living room, urgent and hushed. "Hurry up. She could be back any minute. We need to finish this." My hands started shaking. The plastic bag slipped slightly in my grip, the sound of a can shifting, breaking the silence. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stood frozen in the hallway, barely breathing. Jennifer's voice responded, equally urgent. I know. I'm going as fast as I can. Did you get her to sign the power of attorney document yet?" "Almost," Robert said. "I'll tell her it's just a standard health directive. She trusts me. She won't read it carefully." The words hit me like physical blows. Power of attorney? Why would they discuss this in secret? Why the urgency? Why the deception? I forced myself to move, to make noise. I cleared my throat loudly and called out, "Hello? I'm home." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too bright, too cheerful. Silence. Then shuffling. When I walked into the living room, Robert and Jennifer were sitting on opposite sides of the room, both on their phones, the picture of casual innocence. But I saw the papers hastily shoved under a magazine on the coffee table. I saw the guilt flash across Jennifer's face before she rearranged it into a smile. "Margaret," she said, "back so soon?" Forgot my list, I replied, watching them both carefully. What are you two up to? Nothing, Robert said too quickly. Just keeping Jennifer company while David's at work. They were lying. I knew they were lying, but what exactly were they lying about? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? That night, I barely slept. I stared at the ceiling, listening to Robert snore beside me, and wondered who this man really was. For 3 days, I pretended everything was normal. I smiled at breakfast, asked Robert about his golf game, complimented Jennifer's new haircut when she visited. But inside, I was calculating, remembering, piecing together a puzzle I'd been too trusting to see before. I made a list, not on paper. I wasn't that foolish, but in my mind, reviewing it each night after Robert fell asleep. The evidence was damning once I allowed myself to see it clearly. 6 months ago, Robert had suggested I add his name to my individual bank account, the one I'd inherited from my mother. For emergencies, he'd said. In case something happens to you. I'd refused, feeling oddly protective of that money. Now I understood why he'd been so persistent. Jennifer had been asking detailed questions about my pension, my retirement accounts, even the value of our house. I'd assumed she was just making conversation, perhaps thinking about her and David's financial future. What a fool I'd been. The doctor's appointments took on a sinister new meaning. They weren't trying to help me. They were building a case that Margaret was incompetent, forgetful, unable to manage her own affairs. Once they had power of attorney, they could do whatever they wanted. Move me into a nursing home, sell the house, transfer my accounts, take everything. How much was I worth? I did the math. The house, fully paid off, was valued at around $450,000. My retirement accounts totaled nearly $280,000. My mother's inheritance, still sitting in that separate account, was $125,000. Add in life insurance, David's inheritance that was currently in a trust I managed. We were talking about over $1 million, more than enough to betray someone you'd promised to love for 42 years. The realization was crushing. Not just the betrayal, but the calculation behind it. This wasn't a sudden impulse. They'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. Every kind gesture from Jennifer, every expression of concern from Robert, all of it was theater. All of it was designed to manipulate me, to make me doubt myself, to make others doubt my capacity. I felt physically sick. I spent hours in the bathroom that Thursday morning, crying silently so Robert wouldn't hear. How could he do this? We'd raised a son together. We'd buried his mother together. We'd held each other through David's accident when he was 16, through my breast cancer scare, through his heart surgery. Had any of it been real? But grief was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not yet. I dried my eyes, washed my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. I was 68 years old, but I wasn't frail. I wasn't incompetent. I went to yoga 3 times a week. I balanced my own checkbook. I read voraciously and volunteered regularly. There was nothing wrong with my mind, and I wasn't going to let them destroy me. The question was, what could I do? Going to David seemed impossible. Jennifer would deny everything, and what proof did I have? A conversation I'd overheard? Robert would say I'd misunderstood, that they were discussing something else entirely. My own son might think I was paranoid, especially after months of Jennifer's careful poisoning of the well. The police. And tell them what? That my husband was being nice to me in a suspicious way? No, I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof of what they were planning, and I needed to protect my assets before they could touch them. That Friday afternoon, while Robert was at his golf club, I drove to a bank across town, one where we didn't have accounts. I opened a new account in my name only. Then I went to a lawyer's office, a firm I found through my book club friend, Patricia. I didn't tell the lawyer everything, not yet, but I asked about protecting assets, about what power of attorney really meant, about my options. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Chen, gave me information that both terrified and empowered me. If Robert got power of attorney through deception, it would be hard to reverse. But if I acted now, I could protect myself. "Do you feel you're in danger?" Ms. Chen asked me directly. I thought about that question carefully. "Not physically," I said, "but yes, I'm in danger." Ms. Chen nodded. "Then we need to act fast." I left her office with a plan forming in my mind. It wasn't complete yet, but it was a start. I would protect what was mine. I would expose what they were doing. And I would make sure they never saw it coming, just like I hadn't seen them coming. Monday morning, I told Robert I was going to visit my sister in Boston for a few days. He looked relieved, which told me everything I needed to know. "That's wonderful, honey," he said, kissing my forehead. "You could use a break. Will you drive or take the train?" "Train," I lied. "Sarah's picking me up from South Station." I had no sister. Sarah had died 3 years ago. Robert had forgotten this detail in his eagerness to have me gone. Another piece of evidence, though one that broke my heart. I didn't go to Boston. I went to Ms. Chen's office where we spent 6 hours going through my financial documents, updating my will, and creating new protections. I transferred the bulk of my retirement funds to the new account. I removed Robert as beneficiary on my life insurance, replacing him with David directly, with provisions that Jennifer could never access it. I created a healthcare directive that specifically excluded Robert from medical decisions. "Are you sure about this?" Ms. Chen asked. "These are drastic steps." "I'm sure," I said. And I was. On Tuesday, I did something risky. I went home when I knew Robert would be out and I searched. I started in his office, going through desk drawers, filing cabinets, the safe where he kept important documents. I found the folder hidden in the back of his closet, underneath old sweaters. Inside were printouts of my financial statements, ones I'd never given him. There were notes in his handwriting. M's assets, $900K total. House equity, $450K. Timeline, 6 months? And there, at the bottom, a draft document. A power of attorney form with my signature line highlighted and a sticky note in Jennifer's handwriting. "Make sure she signs before she talks to anyone." My hands trembled as I photographed every page with my phone. This was it. This was the proof, but there was more. A letter, printed but not signed, addressed to a memory care facility. The letter inquired about availability and costs for my wife, who is experiencing increasing cognitive decline and can no longer safely live independently. It was dated for next month. They were planning to institutionalize me. Robert was actually planning to lock me away. I sat on the closet floor, surrounded by the evidence of my husband's betrayal, and I felt something shift inside me. The grief was still there, but it was hardening into something else. Something cold and clear and absolutely certain. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Then I went to see David. My son lived 20 minutes away in a small house he and Jennifer had bought with our help. $50,000 toward the down payment, a gift I now regretted. I caught him alone during his lunch break at a cafe near his office. "Mom?" He looked surprised. "I thought you were in Boston." "I need to talk to you," I said. "About Jennifer and your father." His expression shifted, became guarded. "What about them?" I chose my words carefully. I didn't show him the photos yet. I needed to gauge where he stood first. "Have you noticed them spending a lot of time together?" Meeting privately? They're family, David said slowly. Jennifer's been helping Dad with some financial planning. He's worried about you, Mom. Worried how? David looked uncomfortable. Jennifer mentioned you've been forgetful, missing appointments, getting confused. Dad's concerned about your ability to manage things on your own. He's just trying to help. The betrayal expanded to include my son. They'd already gotten to him, already planted their poison. David, I said carefully, I'm not confused. I haven't missed any appointments. Has Jennifer shown you any actual evidence of this decline she claims I'm experiencing? She's a nurse, Mom. She knows what to look for. She's a dental hygienist, I corrected, and she's lying to you. David stood up. I think you should go back to Boston, Mom. Get some rest. We can talk about this when you're feeling better. When I'm feeling better. As if I were the problem. As if I were the one lying. I watched my son walk away, and I realized I was truly alone in this. Robert had Jennifer. Jennifer had David. But I had the truth, and I had evidence. That night, I made copies of everything. I emailed them to Ms. Chen. I saved them to 3 different cloud services. I put printed copies in a safety deposit box at my new bank. Then I went home and cooked Robert's favorite dinner, smiling as he praised the pot roast, acting as if I knew nothing. But they'd noticed something, I could tell. Jennifer came by that evening, unexpected, her eyes scanning me carefully. How was Boston? She asked sweetly. Wonderful, I lied. Sarah sends her love. Robert and Jennifer exchanged a glance. A quick one, but I caught it. They were suspicious. Good. Let them wonder what I knew. I waited 2 more days, playing the part of the oblivious wife. Then I struck. On Thursday morning, I told Robert I had a doctor's appointment. I'd like to go alone this time, I said. I think Jennifer hovers too much. No offense to her, but I'm capable of talking to my own doctor. His jaw tightened. Margaret. She's just trying to help. She has medical training. She cleans teeth, Robert, I said calmly. I don't need her there. He didn't push it, but I saw the concern flash across his face. I was deviating from the script, asserting independence. This wasn't part of their plan. I did go to a doctor, but not my regular one. Dr. Patricia Morrison, recommended by Ms. Chen, specialized in geriatric care and competency evaluations. I spent 3 hours with her, undergoing cognitive tests, memory assessments, and a full evaluation. The results were unambiguous. Mrs. Abbott, you're cognitively intact, Dr. Morrison said, handing me a formal letter. Your memory is appropriate for your age, your reasoning is sound, and you show no signs of dementia or cognitive decline. In my professional opinion, you are fully capable of managing your own affairs. I had the document notarized immediately. That evening, Robert brought up the power of attorney again. We were sitting in the living room, the television playing something neither of us watched. Margaret, I've been thinking. With my heart condition, and with us getting older, we should have proper paperwork in place. I had a lawyer draw up some documents. He pulled out a folder, the same folder I'd photographed in his closet. It's just standard stuff, he continued. A health directive, power of attorney, that kind of thing. It protects both of us. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I'd slept beside for 42 years was sitting there, preparing to trick me into signing away my autonomy, and he couldn't even meet my eyes. I've already taken care of it, I said quietly. His head snapped up. What? I updated my will and my health directives last week. I have everything in order. With who? His voice had an edge now. You should have consulted me, Margaret. We should make these decisions together. The way you and Jennifer were making decisions together? I asked. The way you've been meeting privately, going through my financial information, planning my future without including me. The color drained from his face. I don't know what you think you heard, I know exactly what I heard, Robert. We need to finish this before she gets back. You were going to trick me into signing power of attorney. Then what? Put me in a memory care facility? Empty my accounts? He stood up, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt afraid of him. You're being paranoid. This is exactly the kind of confused thinking Jennifer has been worried about. Stop, I said, standing to face him. I'm not confused. I had a full cognitive evaluation today. I'm completely competent, and I have documentation proving it. Whatever you and Jennifer are planning, it's over. The mask slipped completely. His face twisted into something ugly, something I'd never seen before. You stupid woman. Do you have any idea how much money you're wasting? How much we could— He stopped himself, but it was too late. How much you could steal? I finished. Yes, Robert, I know exactly what this is about. My phone rang. Jennifer. I didn't answer, but moments later, she was at our door. David was with her. Robert must have texted them some kind of warning. Mom, David said, trying to sound reasonable. Dad's really worried. We're all worried. These paranoid accusations are backed by evidence, I interrupted. Your father has been documenting my finances without my knowledge, planning to have me declared incompetent. There are drafts of letters to memory care facilities. I have photographs of everything. Jennifer's eyes widened. Robert shot her a warning look. Show me, David demanded. I pulled out my phone, started displaying the photos. David's face changed as he scrolled through them, seeing his father's handwriting, Jennifer's notes, the timeline they'd created for my destruction. Dad? David's voice was shaking. What is this? Your mother is twisting things, Robert said desperately, taking things out of context. It says M's assets, $900K. It says timeline, 6 months. What context makes this okay? Jennifer grabbed David's arm. Baby, your mom has been acting strange. We were just trying to protect her. Protect her money, you mean? David said quietly. He looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in months. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Jennifer's expression hardened. The sweet mask fell away, revealing something calculating beneath. You're making a huge mistake, Margaret. You're old. You're alone. Who do you think people will believe? Not you, I said coldly. Not anymore. Get out of my house. This is my house too, Robert said. Actually, I replied, it's my house. My mother left it to me before we married. You have no legal claim to it. My lawyer confirmed this yesterday, so I'll ask again. Get out. They left, but Jennifer turned at the door. This isn't over. I closed the door behind them and locked it. My hands were shaking, but I'd done it. I'd confronted them. I'd taken the first real step toward protecting myself. David stayed. He sat on the couch, his head in his hands. I should have known. I should have seen it. She's your wife, I said gently. You loved her. You trusted her. I'm filing for divorce, he said. Tomorrow. David. No, Mom. What she tried to do to you, I can't. I won't. That night, I slept in my locked bedroom, a chair propped against the door. I needed a few days to recover, to process what I'd just done. The fear was real, coursing through my veins. But so was something else. Relief, and the cold certainty that I would win this fight. For 3 days, I didn't answer Robert's calls. He'd moved into a hotel, or perhaps into Jennifer and David's house, though David assured me he'd kicked Jennifer out. I didn't care where Robert went. I needed space to think, to breathe, to remember who I was before 42 years of marriage. My house felt different without him, lighter. I could breathe fully for the first time in months. I went to yoga, had coffee with Patricia from book club, tended my garden. Simple things I'd somehow stopped doing while managing Robert's moods and schedules. On the 4th day, Robert came back. He didn't use his key, I'd changed the locks, but knocked softly on the door. When I opened it, he looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled, his eyes red. "Margaret," he said, and his voice broke. "Please, can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I let him in. We sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd had breakfast thousands of times, and he cried. Actually cried. "I've been such a fool," he said. "Jennifer." She got into my head. She kept talking about how we deserve to enjoy our retirement, how your mother's money should be ours to use, not just sitting in an account. She made it sound so reasonable. "So you decided to have me declared incompetent?" I asked coldly. "No. God, no. That was never. I was just trying to understand your finances, to see if we could afford to travel more. Jennifer was the one who started talking about power of attorney, about protecting you from yourself. She made it sound like love, like care. I was an idiot to listen to her." He reached for my hand. I pulled away. "Margaret, please. 42 years. That has to mean something. I made a terrible mistake, but it wasn't too late, was it? We didn't actually do anything. I never filed anything. I never tried to institutionalize you. I was stupid and greedy, but I stopped myself. Doesn't that count for something? Or I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. 42 years is a lifetime. The thought of ending it, of being alone, was terrifying. What would people think? What would my life look like? "I'll go to counseling," Robert pressed. "We can see a therapist. I'll prove to you that I can change, that I'm the man you married. Please, Margaret, don't throw away our entire marriage over one mistake." One mistake. As if months of planning, of conspiracy with our daughter-in-law, of documenting my supposed incompetence was one mistake. "I need time," I said finally. "I need time to think." He left, but he'd planted seeds of doubt. Was I overreacting? Was I throwing away something precious over what amounted to planning, not action? Could people really change? That night, Jennifer called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Margaret," she said, her voice soft, apologetic. "I owe you the biggest apology of my life. I've been seeing a therapist since everything happened. She's helped me see how toxic I was being, how I let greed poison my relationships." I said nothing, waiting. "I grew up poor," Jennifer continued. "Really poor. We were evicted 3 times before I was 10. I've always been terrified of being broke again, and when I saw how much you had, how stable you were, I became obsessed with security. I convinced myself that protecting that money was protecting our family's future. I was wrong. I was so wrong." It sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in a mirror. "David is divorcing me," she said, and now she was crying. "I've lost everything because of my greed. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know that I understand what I did was unforgivable. I'm moving back to Ohio, back to my parents. I wanted to say goodbye." "Goodbye, Jennifer," I said and hung up. But the call bothered me. Both conversations bothered me. Was I being too harsh? Too unforgiving? I'd always prided myself on being compassionate, on giving people second chances. Was I becoming hard, bitter, someone I didn't recognize? I called Patricia. "Can I come over? I need advice." Patricia's house was warm, welcoming. She made tea and listened as I poured out everything. The confrontation, Robert's tears, Jennifer's apology. "What do you think I should do?" I asked finally. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Margaret, let me tell you about my sister. She forgave her husband for a financial betrayal. He'd taken out credit cards in her name, maxed them out, ruined her credit. But he cried. He apologized. He promised to change. She took him back." "And?" I asked. 2 years later, he did it again. Worse. He'd learned how to hide it better. By the time she found out, she'd lost her house, her retirement, everything. He'd gotten better at deception, not better at honesty. I stared into my tea. You think they're manipulating me? I think they're excellent at manipulation. They nearly convinced you that you were losing your mind, Margaret. They were days away from taking everything from you. A few tears and practiced apologies don't erase that level of calculated cruelty. She was right. God, she was right. The cold clarity returned. Thank you, I said. You're not alone in this, Patricia said firmly. You have friends. You have resources. You have strength. Don't let them make you doubt that. Over the next week, I rebuilt my support network. I went to book club, accepted dinner invitations, spent time with my yoga group. I'd isolated myself over the months of Robert's manipulation, pulling away from friends, from activities. I hadn't even realized I was doing it. Now, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, I felt my resolve strengthen. Robert called daily. I didn't answer. Jennifer sent emails. I deleted them without reading. David visited, supporting me, helping me see how deeply the manipulation had run. I wasn't falling for their tears. I wasn't falling for their promises. I knew the truth, and I was ready for whatever came next. They came together 2 weeks later. Robert and Jennifer, standing on my doorstep on a Sunday morning, presenting a united front. The masks were back on. Robert looked humble. Jennifer looked remorseful. But I could see the calculation in their eyes. Margaret, Robert said, please, just hear us out. 5 minutes. I should have closed the door. But part of me needed to see what they'd try next, what new game they were playing. I stepped aside and let them in, but I didn't offer them seats. We stood in the living room, an awkward triangle of tension. We've both been in therapy, Jennifer started, and I almost laughed at the obviousness of it. Both individually and together. We've been working to understand how we got to such a dark place, how we let greed corrupt our relationships. We want to make amends, Robert added. Real amends. We've drafted a document that acknowledges what we did, apologizes for it, and promises never to attempt anything like it again. We want you to feel safe, Margaret. He pulled out papers. I didn't take them. We're family, Jennifer said, her voice taking on a pleading quality. David is suffering because of this division. He misses his father. He misses me. We need to heal, to move forward, for his sake, if not for ours, using David as leverage. How predictable. You could have destroyed us, Robert said. You have all that evidence. You could have gone to the police, pressed charges for attempted fraud, but you didn't. That shows us that deep down you still care. You still want to preserve this family. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I'd loved for 42 years, and I saw clearly what I'd been refusing to see. He wasn't sorry. He was scared. Scared of consequences, scared of exposure, scared of losing access to my money. But he wasn't sorry. You're right, I said quietly. I didn't go to the police. Would you like to know why? They both leaned forward slightly, eager, because I wanted you to have time to show me who you really are. Without the evidence hanging over your heads, without criminal charges forcing your behavior. I wanted to see if there was any genuine remorse, any real recognition of what you'd done. And, Robert asked hopefully. And there isn't, I said. You're not sorry, you're just sorry you got caught. Jennifer's expression hardened first. The sweet, apologetic mask cracked. You self-righteous bitch, she hissed. Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? Robert gave you 42 years of his life. I treated you like a mother, and this is how you repay us? By not letting you steal from me, I asked calmly. Yes, Jennifer, How terribly ungrateful of me. Robert tried to recover. Margaret, Jennifer's just emotional. She didn't mean— Oh, she meant it, I interrupted. And I think it's time you both stopped pretending. Why are you really here? What do you actually want? They exchanged a glance, some wordless communication passing between them. Then Jennifer stepped forward, her voice dropping to something cold and sharp. We want you to sign a document stating that you were confused, that you misinterpreted our intentions, and that you acknowledge we never intended any harm. We want you to release us from any liability. In exchange for what? In exchange for Robert agreeing to a divorce without contesting your terms, Robert said. And for Jennifer not filing a defamation lawsuit for the things you've said about her to David. There it was. The real agenda. They wanted protection from consequences, a clean record, and probably hoped that once I signed something stating I'd misunderstood, they could use it to discredit any future evidence I might produce. No, I said simply. No. Jennifer's voice rose. You can't just say no. We're offering you a clean divorce, Margaret. Otherwise, Robert will fight you for everything. Half the house, half your retirement accounts, spousal support for the rest of his life. We'll drag this out for years. We'll make it cost you hundreds of thousands in legal fees. And I'll present my evidence of attempted fraud, I replied. How do you think that will play in court? Robert's face flushed red. You're being unreasonable. We're trying to be civilized here, and you're being stubborn and vindictive. This is why we were concerned about your mental state. You can't see reason anymore. And there it was again. The gaslighting, the suggestion that I was the problem. Even now, caught and exposed, they couldn't help themselves. You need to think about David, Jennifer said, playing her trump card again. He's caught in the middle of this. Every day this continues, he's torn between his mother and his father, between his family. Is your pride really worth destroying your son's peace of mind? David made his choice when he saw the evidence, I said. He chose honesty. I'm proud of him for that. He chose you, Jennifer snapped. But how long will that last when he sees how unreasonable you're being? How unforgiving? How cold? I smiled then. A cold smile that must have frightened them, because they both took a step back. Get out of my house, I said quietly. Both of you. And if you come back here again without a court order, I will call the police. You'll regret this, Robert said, his voice shaking with rage. You'll end up alone, Margaret, bitter and alone. Is that what you want? To die alone because you couldn't forgive one mistake? I'd rather die alone with my dignity than live in luxury built on lies, I replied. Now get out. Jennifer's face twisted with fury. You're going to wish you'd taken this deal. We'll make your life hell. Every friend, every neighbor, everyone will know what a paranoid, vindictive old woman you are. We'll— Out, I shouted, louder than I'd ever shouted in my life. Now! They left, slamming the door behind them. I heard Jennifer's voice through the walls, high and angry, though I couldn't make out the words. I heard Robert's car start, the tires squealing as they drove away. I stood in my living room, shaking. Not with fear, with adrenaline, with anger, with satisfaction. I'd faced them down. I'd refused their manipulation. I'd held my ground. The fear came later, that night, as I lay in bed. They'd threatened me, threatened to destroy my reputation, to drag things out in court. Could they do it? Could they really make good on those threats? But underneath the fear was something stronger. Determination. Cold. Hard, absolutely certain determination. They'd shown me their true faces today. They'd confirmed everything I'd suspected. And now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. No more doubts, no more second guessing. This was war, and I intended to win. The divorce hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Robert had retained a lawyer, an expensive one, and they'd filed a motion for temporary spousal support, half of my retirement accounts, and his share of the house value. They were playing hardball, just as Jennifer had promised. But I had Ms. Chen, and I had evidence. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, a judge who looked tired before the proceedings even began. David sat behind me in the gallery, a silent show of support. Robert sat across the aisle with his lawyer, a polished man in a gray suit who probably charged $500 an hour. Robert's lawyer went first. He painted a picture of a devoted husband who'd spent 42 years supporting his wife, who now faced retirement with nothing because his wife had suddenly and inexplicably cut him off from all finances. "My client is not seeking to punish Mrs. Abbott," the lawyer said smoothly. "He simply wants what's fair after 4 decades of marriage. No mention of the conspiracy, no mention of Jennifer. Just a sad story of a husband wronged by his suddenly cold wife." Then Ms. Chen stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence that provides critical context to this case." She handed a folder to the judge and to Robert's lawyer. I watched Robert's face as his lawyer opened the folder and began reading. The color drained away. His lawyer's smooth expression faltered. "Your Honor," Ms. Chen continued, "the evidence shows a calculated months-long conspiracy between Mr. Abbott and the couple's daughter-in-law to gain power of attorney over Mrs. Abbott through deception, with the ultimate goal of institutionalizing her and accessing her individual assets. These assets, I should note, were inherited by Mrs. Abbott prior to the marriage and are not marital property." The judge looked up from the documents, his tired expression replaced with sharp attention. "These are serious allegations, Counselor. They're documented, Your Honor. We have photographs of Mr. Abbott's handwritten notes detailing Mrs. Abbott's assets and timelines for action. We have drafts of letters to memory care facilities. We have text messages between Mr. Abbott and Jennifer Abbott discussing strategy for getting Mrs. Abbott to sign power of attorney documents without reading them carefully." Robert's lawyer stood up quickly. "Your Honor, I need a moment to consult with my client." "Denied," the judge said, still reading through the evidence. "Did you know about any of this?" The lawyer hesitated. Not to this extent, Your Honor." "Mrs. Abbott," the judge addressed me directly, "did you undergo any cognitive evaluations?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said, my voice steady. "Dr. Patricia Morrison evaluated me thoroughly. Her report is included in the evidence. She found me to be cognitively intact with no signs of dementia or impairment." The judge nodded, then turned to Robert. "Mr. Abbott, this evidence suggests you were planning to defraud your wife. Do you have an explanation?" Robert stood, his hands shaking. "Your Honor, it's not what it looks like. I was concerned about Margaret's well-being. I may have gone about it the wrong way, but my intentions were good." "Your intentions," the judge said dryly, "involved calculating your wife's net worth and creating a timeline for institutionalizing her?" I was confused. Jennifer, she was very persuasive. She convinced me that Margaret was declining, and I believed her. I was trying to help. By deceiving her into signing legal documents? Robert had no answer to that. The silence stretched out, damning. "I'd like to call a witness," Ms. Chen said. "Jennifer Abbott, if she's present." I turned, surprised. I hadn't known Jennifer was here. But there she was, sitting in the back of the gallery, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. A bailiff called her forward. Jennifer approached the witness stand reluctantly. She was sworn in, her voice barely audible. "Ms. Abbott," Ms. Chen said, "you and Mr. Robert Abbott plan to gain power of attorney over Margaret Abbott, correct?" We were concerned about her." "That's not what I asked. Did you plan to gain power of attorney?" Jennifer glanced at Robert, then at his lawyer. No help was coming. "Yes," she whispered. And what did you plan to do once you had power of attorney? I don't. We just wanted to make sure she was taken care of. Ms. Chen pulled out another document. This is a text message from you to Robert Abbott, dated 3 months ago. Can you read it for the court? Jennifer's hands shook as she took the paper. Once we have POA, we can transfer the house into a trust, move her into Brookside Memory Care, and manage her accounts properly. She'll never know the difference. That's what you wrote, correct? Jennifer's face crumpled. I was angry when I wrote that. I didn't mean it. You didn't mean to commit fraud? Or you didn't mean to get caught? Objection! Robert's lawyer finally found his voice, badgering the witness. Sustained, the judge said, but his expression made it clear the damage was done. Ms. Abbott, you're dismissed, and I suggest you retain legal counsel, because I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation of possible fraud. Jennifer fled the courtroom, sobbing. Robert sat frozen, his face ashen. The judge looked at Robert's lawyer. Counselor, does your client wish to continue pursuing claims against Mrs. Abbott? A whispered, urgent conversation. Then the lawyer shook his head. No, Your Honor. We'd like to withdraw all motions. I thought you might, the judge said. Divorce granted. All assets remain with Mrs. Margaret Abbott as separate property. Mr. Abbott, you're fortunate that your wife hasn't pressed criminal charges. Yet. This hearing is adjourned. It was over in less than 2 hours. 42 years of marriage ended. But more than that, vindication. Complete, undeniable vindication. I walked out of that courtroom with my head high. David hugged me in the hallway, tears in his eyes. I'm so proud of you, Mom. Robert left through a different exit, his lawyer hurrying him away from reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the case. I didn't watch him go. I was done looking back. The district attorney did prosecute. That was the part I hadn't expected. I'd been content to simply divorce Robert and move on, but the judge's referral triggered an investigation that uncovered even more than I'd known. It turned out Robert and Jennifer had opened a credit card in my name 6 months earlier. They'd been making minimum payments, keeping it hidden, building up my credit history, so that when they got power of attorney, they could take out larger loans against my assets. The fraud went deeper than I'd imagined. Robert took a plea deal. 5 years probation, community service, and an order to pay restitution. Though since he had no assets, that was largely symbolic. The criminal record was what mattered. Robert Abbott, retired accountant, convicted of attempted fraud against his own wife. The local paper covered the story. His golf club quietly asked him to resign his membership. Jennifer faced worse. She'd forged my signature on the credit card application, which meant she couldn't claim she was merely helping or concerned. She'd committed identity theft, clear and simple. She tried to fight it, hired a lawyer David helped pay for initially, until he saw how unrepentant she remained. But the evidence was overwhelming. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison, though she served only 14 months. David divorced her while she was incarcerated. She'd tried to manipulate him one last time, calling from prison, crying, begging him to wait for her. But David had finally seen her clearly. I married a stranger, he told me. The woman I thought I knew never existed. The house felt too big after everything. Too many memories, too many ghosts. I sold it for $475,000 and bought a smaller townhouse closer to David. Modern, bright, with a garden space that was just big enough for my tomatoes and herbs. It was mine, just mine, and it felt like freedom. I used some of the money to travel, something I'd always wanted to do, but Robert had always deferred. When we retire, he'd say, when we have time. But really, he'd never wanted to spend the money, not on me. I went to Italy, spent 3 weeks eating pasta and gelato and wandering through museums. I went to Ireland, rented a car, and drove the coast. I went to Japan during cherry blossom season and cried at the beauty of it. Patricia came with me on the Ireland trip. We drank whiskey in pubs and laughed until we cried. She'd been through her own divorce years ago, and we traded stories, healed together. I made new friends through travel groups, book clubs, volunteer work. My calendar was full in a way it hadn't been in years. David thrived. Without Jennifer's manipulation and his father's influence, he seemed lighter, happier. He started dating again, took his time, learned to trust himself. He came to dinner at my new townhouse every Sunday, and we'd cook together, talk for hours. Our relationship deepened in ways it hadn't when Robert was part of the dynamic. One Sunday, David asked, "Do you ever regret it? Fighting back? You could have taken Robert's initial offer, just divorced quietly." I thought about that. Did I regret it? The stress, the court dates, the publicity? Not for 1 second, I said. They tried to erase me, David. They tried to make me doubt my own mind, lock me away, steal everything I'd worked for. If I'd let them do it, what message would that send? That it's okay to prey on someone just because they trust you? That there are no consequences? "But you lost Dad," David said quietly. "I lost who I thought he was a long time ago," I replied. "Maybe he was never that person. Or maybe Jennifer corrupted him. It doesn't matter now. What matters is that I found myself again. I found my strength. I found out I could survive on my own and not just survive, thrive." I heard through mutual acquaintances what happened to Robert. He moved to Florida, lived in a small apartment on his Social Security. He'd tried to get hired as a bookkeeper, but no one would hire him with a fraud conviction. He was alone, isolated, his reputation destroyed. I felt a moment of pity, then remembered the letters he'd drafted to memory care facilities. The pity evaporated. Jennifer got out of prison and moved back to Ohio, to her parents' house. She was in her 30s, divorced, a convicted felon, living in her childhood bedroom. David heard from her once, a rambling email about how she'd been a victim too, how Robert had manipulated her, how she'd only wanted financial security. He deleted it without responding. I set up a scholarship fund for older women going back to school, funded with $50,000 from my mother's inheritance. It was called the Margaret Second Chances Scholarship, and it gave women over 50 the opportunity to start new careers, new lives. The first recipient was a 62-year-old grandmother who'd left an abusive marriage and wanted to become a paralegal. At the award ceremony, she hugged me and said, "You showed me it's never too late to fight for yourself." That's when I knew I'd done the right thing. Not just for me, but for every woman who'd been told she was too old, too confused, too emotional to trust her own instincts. I'd fought back, and I'd won. Completely, undeniably, without compromise. On the anniversary of the day I'd first overheard Robert and Jennifer, I took myself out to dinner. A nice restaurant, one I'd always wanted to try. I ordered wine, a perfect steak, dessert. I toasted myself to survival, to strength, to the beautiful life I was building from the ashes of the old one. I was 69 years old, and my life was just beginning. 2 years after the divorce, I barely recognized my own life. It wasn't just different, it was better. I'd spent 42 years being half of a couple, and now I was discovering what it meant to be whole on my own. I'd joined a hiking group for seniors. Every Saturday, we'd tackle different trails, and I loved the challenge. My body grew stronger, and I could now do 5-mile hikes without getting winded. My doctor was impressed with my improved health markers. My townhouse had become a gathering place for book club, dinner parties, and Sunday brunches with David and his girlfriend, Claire. Claire was wonderful, honest, warm, successful, with no interest in anyone's money but her own. She and David were taking things slow, both healing from past betrayals. I'd also become an advocate. After my story appeared in the local paper, other victims of financial abuse started reaching out. I began volunteering with a nonprofit, helping document cases and providing support. I helped a woman expose her son's theft, sat with an elderly man reporting his caretaker for fraud, and became a witness in 3 cases. The nonprofit asked me to speak at a fundraiser. Despite my terror of public speaking, I told my story to 200 people. The standing ovation brought tears to my eyes. Afterward, one woman gripped my hands and said, "You gave me courage. I was going to sign over my house to my daughter tomorrow. Now I'm calling a lawyer instead." That was real power, not power over others, but the power to help and protect. My mother's scholarship fund had grown to help 8 women restart their lives. I'd also started a blog that gained rapid followers, leading to a book deal. Trust yourself. Protecting your assets and your autonomy in marriage would be published next spring. Life wasn't perfect. I still had moments of sadness, grieving for the marriage I'd thought I had. My therapist reminded me I wasn't responsible for Robert's choices, only my own. But mostly, I felt joy. I had friends, purpose, health, independence, and self-respect. I had a son who admired me and financial security no one could take. Meanwhile, Robert's life had deteriorated. His health was failing. He'd had a minor stroke last year and lived alone in Florida, bitter and still blaming me for overreacting. Jennifer struggled in Ohio, her criminal record making employment difficult. David never responded to her attempts to reconnect. I didn't take pleasure in their suffering, but I didn't feel guilty either. They'd made their choices and faced the consequences. One evening, I sat in my garden with wine, watching the sunset. David and Claire were coming for dinner. We'd grill salmon, laugh, and talk. This was peace. This was the life I'd fought for, the life I'd refused to let them steal. I raised my glass to the sunset, to survival, to the beautiful gift of autonomy. I'd won, not just in court, but in life. And that victory was sweeter than anything they'd tried to steal. So I ask you, dear listener, what would you have done? Would you have fought back, or would you have chosen peace at any price? Would you have trusted your instincts or doubted yourself? The signs of financial abuse are subtle. Too much interest in your accounts, pressure to sign documents, isolation from friends, being told you're confused when you question things. If you recognize these patterns in your own life or someone you love, please trust yourself. Seek help. You deserve autonomy, respect, and security. If my story resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Subscribe to hear more stories of survival and strength. And remember, it's never too late to reclaim your life. Thank you for listening to my story. Your support means everything.